Hello, everybody. I'm just going to give it 1 second, make sure everyone gets admitted into this webinar, and then we will get started. Uh, Good, you can go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you, Savannah. Hey, happy WIC Week, NAWIC Nation. So glad that you're here to join us for this wonderful presentation that we are about to embark on. So I'm not going to waste any time and give you a little introduction of our speaker today. Just remember, it is going to be recorded. If you've got questions, please put your questions in the chat. Savannah will be monitoring that, and we will be able to share with Tammie as we go. So don't feel like you have to wait till the end. We will, pop things in along the way. So thank you, Tammie, for being here. We are so excited to have you. So Tammie Ross is the Chief Executive Officer and General Contractor of Residence by Ross. She is the architect of a vision that transforms houses into homes and dreams into blueprints. Her leadership is the cornerstone of a minority woman-owned burgeoning empire in the construction industry that is proudly and resoundingly committed to excellence. Her educational journey is evidence of her dedication to mastery and precision. She is a cum laude graduate of Christian Brothers University and a graduate of Louisiana State University, where she earned her MBA in project management with distinction. Her certification further highlights her pursuit of continuous improvement as a Six Sigma Green Belt professional, a reflection of her strategic acumen and of her proficiency in enhancing business processes. Before laying the foundations of her company, Tammie chartered a remarkable 20-year career in the financial sector, specializing in automotive financing. Her roles have been diverse and impactful, ranging from regional sales director to vice president of business controls and risk management to director of strategic partners. Her real estate tenure is equally impressive, spanning over 18 years and decorated with accolades, underscoring her expertise in property markets and client advocacy. Tammie's mission is to inspire and encourage women and girls to ascend to new heights in traditionally male-dominated fields. Her presence in the construction sector catalyzes change, fostering an environment where diversity is welcomed and celebrated. So Tammie, we are so looking forward to talking with you here in our next hour. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And good morning, everyone. It's such a privilege to be here today, speaking to such an incredible audience at NAWIC. So thank you for the opportunity to share my insights on this topic of communication. And it's a skill that really empowers every aspect of our lives, both personally and professionally. So over the next hour, I'll share strategies and actionable techniques to help you master communication, enhance your connections, and elevate your influence. So by the end of this session, I hope you'll feel inspired and equipped to use these tools to achieve greater success in your personal and professional journeys. So if you could share the screen, we're about to dive in. Thank you. Next slide, please. So communication, it's not just a skill, ladies. It's really a superpower that drives leadership, it fosters relationships, and it creates opportunities. So as you can see, this is something that is of uber importance. In fact, James Hume, he once said, "The art of communication is the language of leadership." So this quote highlights the central role communication really plays in inspiring and in guiding others. So today we're going to explore communication mastery. So we're going to touch on three main pillars: effective listening, navigating difficult conversations, and really mastering nonverbal cues. So let's get started, and I'm looking forward to us laying the foundation on great communication. And the first pillar is listening. So as we transition to the art of listening, listening is just more than just hearing words. It's really about truly understanding the message and the emotions that's behind it. So, have you ever felt deeply heard? It's one of the most powerful experiences you can give or even receive because active listening, it involves giving your full attention, setting aside all the distractions that might keep you from being engaged in the conversation, and then responding in a way that shows you genuinely care. So, for example, active listening, I'm sorry, we had a question to come up, but for example, paraphrasing what the speaker has said, it not only clarifies understanding, but it also demonstrates empathy. So when you practice that empathetic listening, you really build trust and you're opening the door to more meaningful relationships. So I have an example. I have a friend named April, and she and I had a really bad misunderstanding, and it left both of us just feeling really hurt. And instead of us letting it fester, our relationship was important enough for us to really sit down. We listened to each other and we truly tried to understand the other person's perspective. And that simple act of listening, it transformed the situation and really strengthened our friendship. I'm going to pause for a moment. Was there a question that came through regarding any of the information that we've shared thus far? I want to honor that if we can.
I think they might have put their hand up on accident because it's gone now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, no worries. So let's move on to the next one. Strategies for difficult conversations. Those difficult conversations can and will occur. If we can go to the next slide for me. Thank you. Awesome. So these difficult conversations, they're really unavoidable, but they're also opportunities for growth if handled with care and strategy. But the key to having difficult conversation is preparation. um you know Preparation is key because before we have a tough conversation, we really need to take a moment and reflect on our goals. So what is it that you really want to achieve in having this conversation? And when you're thinking about that, you'll also determine, well, what's the best way to approach it? So one technique that I have found invaluable is to use I statements instead of you statements. So for example, instead of me saying, "You never listen to me," you could really say, "Well, I feel unheard in our conversation." And just in hearing those two different approaches, didn't you feel a shift in your focus? It went from blame to expressing your perspective. And we all have our own perspectives. And so remaining calm is equally important. So when emotions run high, it's really easy to lose sight of the larger goal. But by managing your own emotions, you create a space for resolution. I like to call it going into the resolution room. So let me share an example of a challenging conversation I once had and how I applied these principles, and it led to a positive outcome. So I had a colleague, and this colleague was constantly missing deadlines, and we had a shared project. I felt really frustrated. We were both, there was a prime contractor, it was a general, and we were working together on this project. I really felt frustrated because I thought that they weren't pulling their weight. Have you ever had a situation like that happen? You're doing all the work, and both of you all are getting the credit, and you're exhausted, and they seem like they're just living their best life. Well, I didn't want to escalate the situation because I didn't want to damage our working relationship. And to the larger audience, I just felt like that's something that we needed to keep close to the chest and we just work it out ourselves. But before the conversation, I really reflected on what I really wanted. And what I really wanted was clarity on the situation. I wanted a way to move forward. I wanted us to be productive. So instead of me starting with the blame, I used I statements saying, I've been feeling overwhelmed because I've had to cover some of these deadlines that we discussed. Can we talk about how we can balance this better? And just with that approach, it really opened up positive dialogue. So my colleague explained that they were really struggling with some personal challenges that I just wasn't aware of. Because I stayed calm and I focused on the solutions, we were able to come up with a plan together, and it strengthened our collaboration moving forward. But imagine had I came in making those blame statements and drawing the wrong conclusions. Because one of the things that I like to keep in mind is that in the absence of information, our mind creates stories, and those stories are not always accurate. So it's very important to stay calm, stay reflective, and honor the person, dignify them with a conversation. So as you can see, these difficult conversations can definitely open up the door for more opportunities. So let's move on to the next one. So did you know that research shows that up to 93% of communication is nonverbal? And it encompasses body language, our facial expressions, and our tone of voice. So imagine someone saying, "Ugh, I'm fine," arms crossed, looks like they have a bad attitude, avoiding the eye contact. Their body language really speaks louder than those words. So, to convey confidence, we really need to maintain an open posture, making consistent eye contact, and using gestures that reinforce our message. So, our tone of voice is another very powerful tool because it can completely change the meaning of a sentence. So, for example, consider how I didn't say, she stole the money, can imply different things depending on where the emphasis lies. So, let's take a moment to practice. Participate in a quick experiment with me. I'm going to show you a simple phrase, but I want you to interpret its meaning based only on how I say it and my body language. So in the chat, tell me what you're thinking when I said earlier, "Ugh, I'm fine," or "I'm fine." So first, I crossed my arms. My brow was furrowed. I had a flat tone in my voice, and it completely conveyed frustration. Exactly. You are not fine. I'm annoyed. I'm not fine. You didn't want to talk about it. Exactly. You all caught it. But in the second one, I'm fine. How are you? I'm giving you this warm smile. I'm leaning in slightly. I'm having an upbeat tone. So, and it's welcoming. Exactly. Exactly. I'm showing warmth. I'm being pleasant. And it's so much better at that time. Exactly. So I really appreciate you all being able to be a part of that experiment because just in that simple 2-word sentence, "I'm fine," it conveyed so much. And those it also demonstrates how that nonverbal communication is more important than actually the words that's said. Because again, a person is allowed to create stories. They're able to add on, they're putting labels around what's being said because of the nonverbal communication. All right. So let's go to the next one. Great feed in the chat. Great job, everyone. So let's talk about integrating it all and communicating with confidence. Effective communication happens when we listen, when we use verbal and nonverbal skills, and they work together harmoniously. So to master this, we have to practice. Practice is so essential. So whether it's us role playing a challenging conversation, like in advance of having these difficult conversations, we can role play with our spouses, our friends, to kind of help us navigate that challenging conversation. And we can also monitor ourselves. I use in my book, I talk about emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence shows itself in conversations because we need to pay attention to our tone, pay attention to our gestures, and every small improvement, it adds up over time. So don't be hard on yourself if you don't get it right the first time. Continue to practice, work through it, and embrace the feedback that you get from your peers and welcome suggestions. And also, you might need a mentor to kind of help you to use these as opportunities to grow. Because in our business, we're always going to have some form of conversations, and we want it to be a celebratory moment when we finish those, when we're like, "Girl, you got it that time. It was positive. You were able to express your point." We want those types of things. So as we wrap up the slide portion of this presentation, I'd like to leave you with this thought. Communication is a journey. It's not a destination. It's not about perfection. It's about connection. So every interaction is really an opportunity for us to improve and to make an impact. So I'm going to pause for a moment here and we can open it up for some discussions.
Yes, I'd love to start with Ashley's question here. She says, as a female in engineering, I think that every time I use the expression "I feel," it gives issues and emotional direction lacks preciseness. Men don't express that way. they're straightforward. Do you think that expression can be misinterpreted or misled?
That's a very good question. And I think that we all have feelings, and that's something that we have to honor. And, men don't typically use that, but and it can be confusing. We have to know our audience and we have to know how it's going to be received. So oftentimes when we're having these conversations, it's not the first time that we're conversating with someone. So you kind of know it's important to read the audience. So as women, when we say, I feel misunderstood, as in the example of when I spoke to my friend April, we were both women, we both have feelings, and it's okay to have that femininity and to speak it. But you can change the words that you say depending upon the audience. So instead of saying, I feel, you could say, I'm confident if we are to move forward, we need to take this position. So it's all about framing how you want to convey that message. Good question. We're actually through with the slide. If you want to take it down, it's up to you. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, she says positive approach is the key. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Caitlin had said, I hate that women have to receive training like this and school our expressions and control our emotions because men don't have to worry about this.
That is very true. And it's really good to really acknowledge that. I mean, that's what we have to do. And when you acknowledge it, you are now taking power. You're stepping into your power. You own the situation. And so much can be done with that emotional intelligence because I hate the stereotype that women are emotional, but I know for myself, I can be emotional. And certain conversations can drive that emotion to come out. So always keeping a pulse check of the emotions, knowing myself, being self-aware, and then regulating myself, all of those things make a tremendous difference. So you're right. Men don't have to have these conversations as often as we do, but it is very powerful when we master communication. Because as we mentioned before, it's a skill set that once you master that skill set, the world is open to yours. It's up for you to take.
Jane asked, you have examples of other approaches.
Other approaches as far as saying instead of I feel,
I believe
is that
so.
what she's mentioned? Okay, so yes, you reframing it as we mentioned before, saying I am confident, I am certain. All of those words are very optimistic, but they're also very definitive. It's not showing a matter of doubting. It's a matter of I know this is the course that we're going to move forward, and I think that that's the course that you could possibly, that you can take confidently.
Cynthia says, hello, what recommendation do you suggest when your communication is one thing and the receiver is interpreting it differently?
Oh, that's a very good question. One thing to keep in mind is that you cannot control what other people think and how other people will feel or other people will take your message. So one of the things that you can do is, again, when you're knowing your audience and you're knowing who you're going to, if this person is known, because people really don't change their pattern. If the person is known to kind of take things the wrong way, then that empowers you to change your conversation. Also, when you're having it, ask them to give you feedback. Is what I'm saying resonating with you? What are your thoughts about what we've talked about thus far? And that gives you opportunities in real time to make sure that the information that you are sending out is being received the way that you want it to be. And you have an opportunity in that moment to make the needed corrections. Very good question.
And Sharon added and said she's used, I've experienced it this way, as a way to explain it to somebody.
That's a very good way to do that. I've experienced it this way. I'm gonna adopt that.
Leslie says, honestly, women say, I'm sorry way too much. We need to find another thing to say, like, thanks for your patience.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And that's something that I have talked about in several different sessions. We need to get away with saying, I'm sorry. And, in my social media handles, I am Tammie Ross. And when I say that, it's such an empowering statement. When we say our names, I am Jody, all of those things, this is who I am. This is what encompasses all of me. And when we say, I'm sorry, think about how that registers when you're saying, I'm sorry. That's something that we don't want to give ourselves these negative images and these negative statements, because as we continue to say those are not positive affirmations. So I 100% agree. If it is a situation that requires you to acknowledge and to apologize, I apologize that you're experiencing this dilemma. That is not the intention. Those things of reframing it, but ladies, let's get away from saying I am sorry. That's something that I have removed from my dialogue.
Jennifer says, I am an emotional person. I try to be happy at work, and I've had colleagues tell me it bothers them um, and that it's like they want me to be sad and down and not happy at work.
That's very unfortunate that you have to be around people like that on a daily basis. I hate that for you. But you are in control. You have the power to determine how you are going to be and how you're going to feel. And when you say that I try to be happy at work, it's okay. It's okay not to be okay. That's one thing I also want to acknowledge, is that we do ourselves a disservice when we put up false pretenses. One of the things that I talk about in my book is protecting your mental space, and taking care of the things that are making us unhappy, because ultimately we are responsible for our happiness. So you can keep bringing that sunshine if that's the way you feel, and if you're happy, always be you, because being you, only you can be you. And if you're happy every day, don't let anybody take that away from you. If you're not, find out what's not making you happy and fix it, because it starts with you.
Absolutely. How do you recommend handling uncomfortable comments or situations working in this industry? I've been in some very awkward conversations due to comments made by men.
Yes, that's microaggressions. And microaggressions very much exist within our industry. And so, one of the things that I do is try to deal with people according to knowledge. Again, people don't change how they are and that behavior. So, you're more than likely have been around these men in times past. So, I would be prepared to kind of change the conversation, to shift the conversation. And for instance, if something negative or these microaggressions should occur, now if these microaggressions are directed towards you, you could simply say, what do you mean by that statement? You've mentioned that a number of times. I'd like to unpack that and see if we're on the same page, because how I'm receiving it is coming across negatively, and that might not be the way that you're trying to convey it. So can we unpack what you just said? Or you could say something along the way, these types of comments cause me to get into a negative and uncomfortable space. I'd like for us to redirect our attention to something else. Would that be okay with you? And you're getting their buy-in, you're honoring yourself, the uncomfortableness of the conversation, because we need to be able to speak openly and positively and redirect the focus.
Yes, absolutely. We have tons of great questions here still coming
We
in.
do.
How can we distinguish between genuine respect and performative politeness in professional interactions, and what subtle prejudices might persist even in seemingly respectful conversations?
That is a loaded question. So, respect is not going to always be given to us. So it's very important that we respect ourselves and honor ourselves. And for instance, when you say prejudiced thoughts and things may come up, we also have to recognize that all of us have unconscious biases. That's the way we're all wired. And when people's biases are being projected to us, then that is coming from a negative of ignorance, a space of ignorance from their part. It's coming from a space of lack of empathy. And we have to recognize in the times that we're living in, we might see a lot more of that. Because oftentimes when I talk, I really have to gauge my tone, how fast I talk, if my voice goes a little bit deeper, or if it raises. Because oftentimes we're like, why? I have been told so many times in my career, why are you so angry? And that falls into that stereotype of angry Black woman. But I don't give any type of attention to those things. I'm like, I'm not angry. I'm very passionate about what we're talking about, and turning it into that way. And I'm addressing what is not being said, that nonverbal cue. But at the same time, I'm dignifying myself, and I'm saying, and I'm able to speak up for myself, but in a very positive way where we can move forward. Because at the end of the day, if these people are we're working with, we have to learn how to work with them, because we cannot change their behavior, but we can manage how we respond to it. I hope that answers your question.
Well, that's wonderful. We also have someone asking for some advice. We have a 45-year-old woman working in the construction industry, working in the admin side of the work. Been from such a harsh environment, my tone always is rough and is taken in a bad way. How do I work on that without being condescended or diminished?
Well, number one, it's good that you acknowledge that your tone may be part of the problem, because when you are identifying that, you have an opportunity to change it. So it really goes back to that role playing that we were talking about, getting with a friend or getting with a communication coach to say, this is what's going on, giving them these examples so you can reframe how you're thinking about the situation and reframe how you are responding to it. One of the things that we have noticed in my research that I have found when researching communication for my book is that people have their own communication style, their own language. So once you're able to, especially in an admin role, you're more than likely seeing these people every single day. So really noticing, what responses you're getting from particular individuals, and specifically role play the one that really brings out and evokes this frustration in you. So I would really try to practice it, because by managing how you respond, you can also help to change the situation and enlighten the person on what's going on. And it's always a good idea, if you feel as if it is getting in the way of your happiness, your mental state, or keeping you from progressing in work, it's always a good idea to have a conversation about it. Pull them to the side. Say, hey, look, are you available for a cup of coffee? I'd like to pull up and talk to you. Putting them in an environment where it's comfortable, and then talking about it, honoring your feelings, and giving them specific examples of how you interpreted this, and give them the opportunity to respond to the question, is this what you meant by this, or am I taking this incorrectly? Let's have a conversation about it. I think that that's very important.
Yes, and this is a great follow-up, I think, to that. Can you give any advice for ending a confrontation that is no longer productive, or how to avoid getting to that point?
Very good, because some conversations are not going to end productively. So that's great that you acknowledge that. As simple as, this conversation is not it's not it's not heading in the direction as I would hope. I think that this is not a good time for us to continue with it. Let's discontinue it and pull up at another time, and re-engage with each other in a more positive way. That would be the best approach to take, acknowledging that it's gone south. There's nothing you can do about it. But instead of being a part of the conversation and that push and pull, it's just getting worse, end it. This is not being productive at this point. I really would like to revisit it, but now it's just not the good time. Emotions are high, and this is not the way. This is not a productive way for us to resolve it. Allow me to look at my schedule to see when we can pull up again to finish this conversation.
Great advice. I think everyone can use that. I want to go back to another question about bias. If unconscious bias shapes how credibility and authority are perceived in construction, how can women persuade and connect in ways that don't require them to conform to expectations set by those biases, yet still command respect and influence?
I am a girly girl by nature. I love all things girly, and I'm not going to change who I am to conform to someone else's idea of what the standard should be. I am a certified general contractor. I have my Six Sigma certification. All of those things, I know what I am doing. And I have to also realize that in the state of affairs with us working in a male-dominated industry, I embrace the fact that sometimes I'm just going to have to prove myself. And when you know that, again, you're taking control because you know what? Without a word, I'm going to show you my excellence by the work and the output that I do. And if it's an opportunity for me to improve, I'm going to upskill. I'm going to learn a little bit every single day. I'm going to dedicate 15 to 30 minutes a day to enrich my skill sets so that I can be the best at what I do. So when I don't know, it's just something about me, how I'm wired, and most of us really are. When a person challenges or feels as if, or discounts what you're able to do, show them that you can do it. It empowers you to take yourself to the next level.
So, in regards to keeping our emotions in check, how do you do that when you are passionate or upset about something?
It's not going to always be perfect. Sometimes things just going to get a little messy when emotions are there. But it's very good to really know who you are. I self-assess myself as very often to see, how is Tammie doing? How does this make me feel? What are my trigger points? And then by really becoming self-aware, then I can self-manage. And that goes into having a growth mindset. You are the CEO. You are in control of yourself. If you can't control anyone else, but you can control yourself. And the way that we do that is to study ourselves and manage who we are. And it really goes into our brand management. Because one of the things that we don't want to do is, oh my goodness, Tammie's just going to fly off the handle if you ask her a question. If she feels challenged, she's going to get upset. It's just not, it's unproductive when you're talking to her. We never want to do that. If we have identified that our emotions are going to run high, then take a deep breath, take a moment to respond, and silence is strength. Just in thinking about, just in that moment when I just took a little bit of a pause, I'm giving myself an opportunity to breathe in deeply, get oxygen to my brain, and then to release. And then I can respond. Try that.
How do you navigate portraying confidence as a junior? I'm generally a nervous person and have difficulty balancing being humble and mindful of my experience, but not discounting my knowledge or diminishing myself.
Oftentimes we diminish ourselves as women. We don't take credit for the work that we do. I know I spend years doing that, and I just really regret that, taking a smaller role. But, one of the things that I wish you all could see me in person, but one of the things that women do, we make ourselves small. If we're in a meeting, we kind of close ourselves up and we write notes. Do you see how I just reduced myself here? Okay, so what I like to do if I'm in a boardroom meeting and, I need to portray confidence, not only do we show confidence in our posture, raising our back, raising our shoulders and rolling them back. Having great posture is one thing, because all of a sudden my body language is projecting confidence opposed to me slumping down, right? Another thing that I do, I make myself look bigger, even when I need to lose 15 more pounds. But anyway, I will cross my legs and I will sit back and I will open myself up and I'll lean forward. All of these things make us appear to be confident, even when you are dying inside. Your body language can project confidence. You can put on a smile, give that eye contact, and people do not know that you're struggling with confidence in that moment. So first, try that with your body language, because body language is powerful. The second thing is that, I'm celebrate the successes. It doesn't have to be me, I, but celebrate the successes as a team. You know, Thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to lead the project. It was a tremendous success, and I appreciate the team coming together and working on those goals that was outlined at the inception of the project. You see how you're inserting yourself? You see how you're bringing in, hey, look, I did this too, or I'm the mastermind behind it without doing the me. So it's a fine balance, but it's one that's worth taking the effort to do it. And when we're doing our performance assessments, I had a team of 14 people at one point that worked directly for me when I was in the automotive industry. And it was 9 guys and the rest of them was ladies. When it was performance review times, the guys was like, I did this. It was as if I had a superhero working for me. They really projected everything that they did and put that out there. But I learned something very valuable from that, because on the other side, the ladies were like, I just achieved it, or this is an area of opportunity for me. They did not point out their celebrations, the things that they accomplished throughout the year. So one of the things to foster confidence is take a note of the things that you've done. Take a note of the things that you have accomplished and remind yourself of the things and the wins that you have had. And that will allow you to be more confident and be able to speak to it more.
Awesome. I want to take a moment and give you your flowers. You're getting a lot of praise in the chat, and I wanted to read this
Oh,
one message that I think kind of sums up how everyone is feeling. I love your presence, voice, and your confidence. Thank you for being here to empower us today.
thank you. That
Thank you.
means a lot. I hope that this is a good takeaway for you all.
Absolutely. And then Precious, I saw you've had your hand up for a bit. You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question.
Hi, Precious.
Maybe.
Sorry,
If you're speaking, you're on mute. There you go.
sorry. I wasn't aware that my hand was raised, but
Oh,
I did
no.
just go ahead and follow you on Instagram because it's so hard to find women and like minority women to follow and get that mentorship from. I actually just finished a women's in construction program with all women, minority women. So it's been amazing to come across someone that we can get great information from and learn from, who's in the industry already, to kind of guide us, because like we say, it's a minority men business. So it's like stepping into these rooms, how do we find that confidence? So I struggle with confidence, but I know that I can do it. But it's like, how do you prepare yourself to step into these type of rooms with men, I would say?
That's a very good question, Precious. And when I got into auto, it was in 2007 when I got into the automotive industry. And most dealerships are owned by Caucasian men. And when I would come into there and show them how to finance their customers and things along those lines, I really felt, think about a dealership, all of these people around, most of them are men, and you're coming in there and you're telling them how to do their book of business. So I had those feelings of intimidation. But one of the things that I did was I really studied my product. I studied what I needed to know. I also studied what their jobs entailed and how I can bring value. And each time I came into those places and spaces, I brought value. But I definitely know how it feels, one, to be the only woman in the room, and two, to be the only minority. And so having that intersectionality, hey, let's just face it, it can be very difficult. But you have to know what you bring. You have to know your stuff. We cannot come into those places, because I never want anyone to feel as if, oh, she's just here, because of, that she has this intersectionality. I want to be here because I have mastered my craft. I've studied it. I've gone to school for it. I've put in the work. So when you do that, it's automatically going to foster that sense of confidence. And when whatever area you're lacking, identify it and upskill. Dedicate that time to make you better so that you can feel confident. Because one thing I know for sure, when I walk into a room and I look around and I assess the situation, I know that I have to be excellent at what I do just to have a seat at that table. So if nothing else helps you to feel confident, think about that. I had to put in hard work just to be here. And so celebrate that, because that shows a level of excellence that you can be proud of and that you can stand on until you get to where you're going.
Absolutely. I saw Nicolette said she just purchased your book. Yes, I definitely
Yay!
recommend you guys purchase the book. I'll put a link in the chat right now for you. I think it's a great resource and it's going to expand on all of the great points that we've talked about today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Do you want to keep going with some questions?
Absolutely. Let's do
All
it.
right. So, how do you navigate the fine line between being persuasive and being perceived as difficult in a space where assertiveness is often welcomed from men but scrutinized in women?
Hmm. Assertiveness. Give me that question one more time.
Absolutely. How do you navigate the fine line between being persuasive and being perceived as difficult in a space where assertiveness is often welcomed from men and scrutinized in women?
You know, first I'll look at it in all of the things that I'm saying would be presented in a positive way, even if it's a directive that needs to be done. So like, for instance, we need to finish this on time. We need to finish this project on time and within budget because of this. So having those if and then statements kind of helps you, because what happens is that you're providing the directive, you're being assertive, but you're also in a way getting people's buy-in by telling them what the result is going to be. So when people can see it, they can kind of, put themselves and be agreeable to the path that takes to move forward. So asserting it in a way to where you're also communicating the expected and projected outcome, that's one of the ways that I have helped me to navigate, because you're right, it is a fine line, a tightrope that we have to walk. But having those if and then statements is a great way to start.
And then we have, how do you recommend phrasing emails and avoiding wording such as would you be able to or could you, and being more direct with questions and requests via email?
Okay. So we have this, would you or could you say, we're working on this project and your expertise is needed in this area for us to provide this deliverable by such and such time. Please let me know if there are any objections to how we, or concerns or questions as to how we need to move forward. Try that.
This one is a good one. Do you believe women with bubbly personalities hinder their chance to progress in leadership roles?
With what personalities?
Bubbly.
Absolutely not. So I totally disagree with that. Bubbly personalities are so welcoming to have, and if you have a bubbly personality, not so much a cheerleader, you want to be taken seriously. But having a bubbly personality, bringing levels of energy, I don't think that it discounts who you are or your type of leadership. I think that it's good to be, I think it's good to be, if that's who you are, then one of the things is this: don't fake it. Because if you fake this personality, then it's going to reveal itself. And then people are like, oh, can I take her seriously? Well, where did this come from? Be your true, authentic self, but manage yourself in the situations, and you can still be bubbly and be serious. So I think that it's very important to be who you are at all times.
Is there any advice for mentoring younger women? I'm really outspoken and I have a strong professional foundation that makes me not fear retaliation. How do I help my girls find their voice to grow in confidence?
How you can help the young, I love mentoring young women, because it can be very difficult for them to find their voice. First off, let them know that their voice matters, and pulling up with them on a one-on-one situation, a one-on-one if possible, to talk to them about their certain levels of expertise, their areas of strength, and the areas of opportunity that they may have, and then unpacking it at their pace, giving them assignments that they can work on, giving them good reads to follow, and helping them along the way. So mentorship is very important. And if you're outspoken, as you mentioned, really directing it and shifting the focus on what's important to be outspoken about, because there's certain things that we definitely need to speak and voice. But then there's other things that we don't have to be outspoken about every single thing. So I think that it's good to prioritize what is most important to you and stand out in that respect.
So what is the best way to communicate as an introverted manager with an outspoken direct report?
I have had that situation. I'm not introverted, but I have had an outspoken associate. So I have a question. Is the person being outspoken or extroverted in a way that's disrespectful? Or is it just their personality? I'd like to tailor the response to my response to that to give you good, accurate advice. So just
She said at times slightly disrespectful.
at times slightly disrespectful. As a leader, you cannot accept disrespect. So again, I would say something along the lines, you made this statement. I need you to explain what you mean by this statement. We need to get to that because I don't want to perceive it as being disrespectful, but I do need to understand better what you're trying to say. One of the things we don't want to do is put labels, because all of us have different backgrounds. We were raised differently. Like I was raised saying yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, to my parents and my elders, and other people were not. So it's really good to, in my book, I talk about cultural communications. Some people communicate differently. And so I had a young lady who worked for me. And, my Southern socialization causes me to, like I said, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, or, really listening to my elders and things along those lines. So I had a young lady that worked for me. She was out of Philadelphia. So I had to understand that there's regional differences. She was also 15 years younger than me. So her socialization is going to be very different from mine. But I felt like she was being disrespectful, especially in the view of others when we had like a Zoom calls and things like that pulled up as a team. So I flew up there and I scheduled a time to do a side by side with her. And I flew up there and I brought those things. I was like, let's talk about, these things that you've mentioned or these concerns that you have. I'd like for us to honor what you're saying, but I also want to make sure that what you're saying to me, I'm receiving it the way that you want to. It's not in a condescending manner because it's borderlining it. And I selected you to work, on my team. So I see your potential, but we do need to discuss how you are addressing the directives that I give to you. Hopefully that will help you, because that is something that's a fine line to navigate, because as leaders, if we allow others to disrespect us, it opens up the door for others to disrespect us. And it shows weakness in our leadership when we allow these behaviors to come and we don't talk about it.
This is great because we're coming to an end. I'd like to leave this conversation with action items. So, if you were to recommend a few practical steps to take this new mentality we are taking from this chat into our everyday practices, what would those be?
First off, practice, practice, practice. We'll never be perfect at communication. It's something that we'll always be striving to master. But I would practice it. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing I do is really get to know who you are, know your trigger points, and plan for conversations that might be triggering to you. And the third thing that I would do is to really read up on communication strategies that can help you to be successful, and put those examples, put those action items to work. Try them, because what works for me might not work for you. So we have to acknowledge that and see what we can put in our wheelhouse, what we can put in our toolbox that will be effective for us. But I would try with those first three things as a good way to start. Good question.
Yeah, to complement that, do you think there are any other books or resources that you recommend that helped you when you were mastering communication?
Yes, one of the ones is it's a great book. It's called "Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office," and I know that that title may you know, take away from what I just said about being bubbly, because that's not what the book is about. But it really helps us to see as women some of our behaviors that might be holding us back. Great book. Another book that I would say is The Growth Mindset. Would be a great one, because anything dealing with a growth mindset will allow you to see how you're evolving. Every year you're changing, every moment we're changing. And so as you evolve, how you can continue to grow in your evolution. So those two, I think that there would be good reads. And of course, my book, Breaking Ground, Breaking Glass Ceilings, I hope that it will be beneficial to you as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I can hardly keep up with all the comments. It's been a really great discussion here in the chat. And
Awesome.
I just really appreciate your time. I didn't know if you wanted to close out with anything or if you wanted to maybe do a couple more questions, we can.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you again for having me. I absolutely love this industry. It's something that, you know, I think that we can thrive in whatever environments that we're in. And, you know, girl, you got it. You do. And step into that power, own your space, and be the best you, and be only in competition with you. As women, we need to gather around each other, uplift each other, support each other, and be collaborative in our endeavors, and anything is possible. So I really appreciate you all being here today. And you feel free to reach out to me on IG or any other social media platform, because I'd love to be able to celebrate your success. And if there's other questions, hopefully I'll be able to empower you through those future discussions as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. Definitely connect with her on LinkedIn, Instagram, buy her book. She is amazing. And I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate everyone's time and their participation in this. This has been a really great conversation, and I think we can all step away with a lot learned. So thank you so
Awesome.
much, Tammie.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
ladies.